This is From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Each week, Janice shares her wisdom to enlighten, educate, and advance the culture in America today. Janice Pons is a mother, author, and free thinker, and your host for our podcast this evening. Now let's join your host, Janice Pons.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Come on in. My name is Janice Pons. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm the host on this podcast, From Destruction to Dignity, Clinical Perspective, Spiritual Truth. Tonight, we're going to continue our amazing journey together as we're gaining a clearer understanding of our nation, how it's supposed to work. We've been focused on leadership. Last week, we talked about leadership. I'm going to continue focusing on some things about leadership because leadership is really important. We need good leaders in place because our nation was buckling and imploding in 2024 and years, at least 4 years, we were just in a whole different flow. You all know what was going on. And we are still rooting for and believing God for and praying for and supporting the 265,900,000 working Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet. President Trump, our president, is focused on getting these people in a position where they can have better jobs, our economy. Listen, this man is strategically going to the root of some issues. And a lot of people don't like what he's doing, but more and more are having their blinded eyes opening. So I am gonna always refer to those people. 78% of working Americans felt like we weren't going in the right direction. 79%, let's say 80%, let's round it off. And 78% of working Americans were living paycheck to paycheck, barely making ends meet. So we want to keep them lifted up. Our flag represents our nation and the citizens thereof. Our presidential seal represents praying for our president. And we're going to keep moving forward because this week, we're going to look at something that's listen, if you haven't figured out that our president is focus, focus like they say, a face set like flint. Leadership matters. We talked about that last week, and we're going to talk about the power of what happens when you have focused leadership. Those are the kind of people I want to be with. Some people say, well, I messed around and got older. Yes, I've messed around and got older. I'm not some 25, 35-year-old little chick anymore, like younger woman. I'm older now, and I am very strategic in my thought patterns and my partnerships and just what God has called me to do. I want to bring solutions to the table that have action, not just talking about what we need to do, but I'm talking about putting legs to this thing. It's powerful. It's our time, and we got a leader that he feels the same way, and he's going for it. And if you've been paying attention for the last 2 to 3 months since he got inaugurated, listen, it's amazing. And so we got to keep him covered in prayer. We've got to keep the nation covered in prayer. And so I've always talked about who needs to be the leader of America. We know who is. What's at stake? We know what is. And a lot of what people think is at stake, they've been lying to you on the mainstream media. They want you to think this is what's at stake. Listen, what's at stake is way bigger than the stuff they've been talking about because it's manipulative, control, contrived, propaganda that they want us to go in a certain way. No different than what Hitler's minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, did back during that time when we know the outcome. So tonight, we're going to examine something that has generated a lot of discussion in our nation. Focused leadership. Listen, there are leaders, so-called leaders. Joe Biden was a so-called leader. We saw what happened. Kamala Harris presents herself as a leader. She didn't win. Why? There were dynamics. I've done podcasts on it. All you have to do is read and get intellectually honest to understand that we didn't want to go. The majority of the country did not want to go in the direction that she wanted to take us in. Keeping the borders open, keeping illegal immigrants coming in, focusing on changing the gender of our children and teaching it in schools and teaching sexual acts acts even in kindergarten and what Obama's safe schools are did. Go look up Kevin Jennings. Y'all need to know what that man did under the leadership of Obama. And this is what parents are so up in arms in schools about. Obama put it in our schools. He had a specific goal as a leader, and so does Trump. Oh, yeah. What does it look like to have focused leadership? Biden had a specific focus. Kamala had a specific focus, and we got the results that we did. So now we have focused leadership that's going in an entirely other direction, an entirely other flow. How does focused leadership operate? Why does a leader need to be focused? So, in that light, we're going to look at something that I saw unfold related to leadership, and it really shifted some things. It involved the role of apologies regarding leadership. Apologies. Oh, I apologize. I missed it. That's one of the most powerful things I ever did with my son as his mother. And as a mother, you're a leader. Son, I missed it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I take full responsibility. And one time he said, "What are you taking responsibility for, Mom?" And I needed to say it. We need to say what we're taking responsibility for. It makes a difference. It will foster maturity and it fosters trust. And we're going to talk about that from a clinical perspective. So, I'm always saying we're going somewhere and it's expecting us when we get there. Come and go with me. After a failed attempt to pressure President Donald Trump into more U.S. aid, Ukrainian President Zelensky backtracked and issued an apology to the American leader. We all saw how he acted out in the White House. Now, he sent a letter to our president, and the letter came after that very heated confrontation in the Oval Office, where President Trump made it clear that Ukraine would not be receiving unlimited support. It was a blank check. And all the dynamics around Ukraine, I'm going to say this, a lot of it involved money laundering. That's another podcast. I'll get to it later. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's administration, he's a special envoy to the Middle East. He confirmed that Zelensky, when Witkoff was on this special envoy to the Middle East, he confirmed that Zelensky sent a letter expressing regret for how, listen to the specificity of this, of how he behaved during a visit to the White House. That's what I'm talking about. Like when my son said, "Mom, what are you sorry about? What do you apologize?" I'm sorry for, I had somebody call me talking about, well, if I did anything. What do you mean if? You call me. You called me, and then they said, I was wrong. And you know what I said to them? My respect and love for you as a woman went to an entirely other level. They took responsibility. Zelensky said, I apologize. I regret how I behaved in the White House. So he sent a letter to the president and he apologized for the whole incident that happened there in the Oval Office. He described the move as an important step. This move has been described by leaders as an important step as the U.S. and Ukrainian officials prepare for future negotiations that were set to happen in Saudi Arabia. President Trump had already revealed the existence of the letter during his joint address to Congress, stating that Ukraine was willing to negotiate with Russia and that it valued past U.S. assistance. However, he didn't mention the apology when he addressed Congress, but he talked about the negotiations and all of the dynamics related to that. But the incident that led to Zelensky's letter unfolded during his visit to Washington, as we all know, where he clashed with President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance over military aid. It had been a blank check under the Biden administration, and there was even monies that Zelensky talked about that he didn't get. So that's a whole nother podcast as well. We've alluded to that before, but I want to stay focused about this issue of focused leadership and the role of an apology with leaders. After that tense meeting, Zelensky publicly criticized the discussion, but initially refused to issue an apology. Initially, he said, I'm not apologizing for anything. Now, after realizing his miscalculation, he subsequently appeared to be attempting to execute damage control. With military aid frozen and intelligence sharing with Ukraine on hold, Zelensky faced mounting pressure to agree to peace talks. See, when you got leadership with backbone, President Trump did more regarding the issue with Ukraine than Biden ever did. It was just blank check after blank check after blank check. Negotiations wasn't even on the table. Now it is. So there were negotiations that took place in Saudi Arabia that focused on securing a ceasefire and discussing security measures for a post-war Ukraine. Also, in these negotiations and talks was a potential minerals deal between the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and Ukraine, previously delayed due to the Oval Office confrontation. But it was also on the table. So despite Zelensky's attempt to mend ties, the Trump administration remained focused on ending the war. Whether or not the Ukrainian leadership fully cooperates, that focus on ending the war, it remains to be seen, as it's an unfolding yet evolving yet moving situation. You know why? Because Donald Trump is involved. President Trump received that apology from Zelensky in that letter following their contentious encounter at the White House. It was a gesture that the White House reportedly demanded to mend relations between the countries. So there you go. Leadership said, listen, you're going to take responsibility for your behavior. You came on our soil. You came in our White House and you acted out the way you did. So, President Trump took a stand. He talked about Zelensky was ready to negotiate a peace deal with Russia. These things take time. And that Ukraine values how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. That's a different kind of language. But Zelensky had to come to a point of taking some responsibility. President Trump said that letter stated that Ukraine is ready to sign a deal. It takes time, guys. But gosh, was that kind of interaction and language being talked about during the Biden-Harris cabal, or maybe Harris-Biden? Who was in charge? Who was in charge? Were those types of interactions happening? No, we know it wasn't. So President Trump talked about Ukraine. Our taxpayer dollars have been going towards this. It was a blank check. So he said they were ready to sign a deal, and we're getting closer and closer to it, allowing the U.S. to to have access to this is a part of the deal, have access to mineral resources that also would provide security against future Russian aggression. But at the same time, President Trump has a personality. You saw him in Saudi Arabia. We saw him in Qatar. Those leaders were just amazingly engaged with him. It's a new sheriff in town. What happened in the past, guys? We have a world stage that we are on, and we are on it in an entirely other way now. I hear people talking, well, he needs to be careful. Yes, he does. Let me tell you what, that man has a strategy, and he's not new at it. He has a soul that has his mind, his will, his emotions, his intellect, his drive, and his desires. It's all about this nation and us prospering, and we the people. He wants us to prosper as citizens. Do you hear me? So President Trump's position about Ukraine is, wait a minute, I'm going to help you all with this, but he's like, the United States is going to get blessed. So he's looking at how to prosper us. Oh yeah, minerals is a resource. He said, I appreciate that he sent this letter talking about Zelensky, but also included in that letter was an apology for that very public heated exchange between them, and it was an important step that there's been a lot of discussion between our teams of our nation and the Ukrainians and the Europeans who are relevant to this discussion as well. U.S. officials led by Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, along with Ukrainian officials, we're talking about a world stage. This wasn't happening under Biden, Harris, that cabal. Our National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, along with the Ukrainian officials, all of these leaders coming to the table, including Zelensky's chief of staff, his foreign minister, and his defense minister. They were going to meet in Saudi Arabia, but it got postponed to mold these peace negotiations, and the movement, it stalls, it moves forward. It stalls and moves forward. But President Trump has resolve, and he ain't playing. No, he's not playing, and they know it. So Zelensky was in Saudi Arabia. President Trump was in Saudi Arabia to meet with the Crown Prince. Did you all see how that Crown Prince was honoring? Did you see how they were honoring America? I believe it was from the heart. I really believe it was from the heart. We're going to see what unfolds. I do know this. He committed to investing $600 billion in our nation. And President Trump wants to increase it to $1 trillion. We'll see what happens. $600 billion is powerful. So let's get back to this situation in Ukraine, because it is front and center. Since that Oval Office incident, President Trump paused the military assistance and intelligence sharing. But Witkoff says it's important for the officials in Saudi Arabia to discuss security protocols for Ukraine. You got to get people at the table. Their territorial issues and their utility plans that have to be worked out. These are not the things listen, these things aren't complicated. Countries and trained leaders know how to execute and plan these things. They just need to be put on the table, and everybody needs to be transparent about what their expectations are. Then we move forward to have a discussion about how we compromise. President Zelensky of Ukraine, after meeting with President Trump, and President Trump pausing the aid to Zelensky's war-torn country, Zelensky posted that what he posted, it could be considered a conciliatory message and an attempt to get back into Trump's good graces. That's how it started off. He posted. He blew it, and he knew it. Then came the letter. Our meeting in Washington at the White House did not go the way it was supposed to, he posted. It's regrettable that it happened this way. It's time to make things right. Do you hear me, guys? Do you hear me? Do you hear me? When you got a leader like President Trump that stands up and is not, falling upstairs, falling, pooping in his pants and just can't even articulate a full sentence. Guys, that's weak. That's weak. That stuff is weak on the world platform. It's weak when you got somebody cackling, and sometimes looking drunk. That's weak. Trump has backbone. So Zelensky comes back and said, that's regrettable what happened. That's regrettable. We would like future cooperation and communication to be constructive. That's what he came back and said. Listen, these dynamic leads into our clinical perspective. Yes. President Trump is focused as a leader. His focused presentation and the focus that he has in his soul led to Zelensky apologizing. He posted on X, and he came back and he wrote a letter. Oh yeah, we're talking about focused leadership. Leadership matters, Leadership matters, and focused leadership matters. Listen, my God. These other folk were all over the place with their agendas. But there's a new sheriff in town. So all of this leads into our clinical perspective for tonight. Our clinical perspective is going to involve us exploring the power of an apology. The power of an apology. This is exactly what Zelensky did. He apologized for his behavior in the White House earlier this year. And so here we are months later, and Russia's now saying that they're ready to talk. And all of this is connected to the focused leadership of President Donald John Trump. Come on, somebody. Do you hear me? A sincere apology can be instrumental in acknowledging mistakes and taking responsibility. It can disarm anger. It can prevent further misunderstandings and heal relationships, demonstrating what? Maturity and fostering trust. Let's look at the power of an apology. Why do apologies even matter? Does leadership matter? Yes. Do apologies matter? Man, when I get people that I have interacted with and they apologize for how they missed it, my respect for them goes to an entirely other level. My support and my love for them goes to an entirely other level. It says something about their character. One of the quickest things you can do, I do it professionally all the time. I say, guys, hold on. Hold on, I missed it. I apologize. Take full responsibility and say what you did. It means someone is acknowledging mistakes. Apologizing shows you recognize you made a mistake or overstepped a boundary. I remember that. I said, whoa. Wait a minute. I overstepped a boundary right there. I want to make that right. And say what it is. It demonstrates maturity and a willingness to learn. What would happen if we operated from a mindset of taking responsibility? A genuine apology involves taking ownership of your actions and their impact rather than making excuses or justifying your behavior. We're talking about maturity. What would happen if we focused on disarming anger? Disarming anger. A sincere apology can help to calm the other person's anger and allow for a more constructive conversation. What would happen if we worked on and focused on restoring trust? When you apologize, you demonstrate that you value the relationship and you're willing to work to repair it. Relationships get disrupted sometimes, but they can be repaired. What would happen if we took responsibility to point took responsibility to the point of promoting forgiveness? A heartfelt apology can pave the way for forgiveness, allowing both parties to move forward. What would happen if we worked on improving communication? Apologies can open up communication channels and allow for better understanding between people. What would happen if we focused on learning and growth? Acknowledging mistakes and apologizing for them is a crucial part of learning and growing through experience. What would happen, my precious fellow Americans, if we focus on strengthening relationships? Apologies can strengthen relationships by demonstrating what? Empathy, understanding, and a willingness to repair harm. That's what Zelensky did. You have to give people an opportunity to do something different. That's what President Trump is doing with Saudi Arabia. People say, well, you know, they Muslims. I got Muslims that I love. I'm not going to not talk to them because they're Muslims. What about if we talk? Provoke thought, bring awareness, and work towards interventions together. My motto on social media is what would happen if we talk to and with each other versus at each other. Now, apologies can be effective or ineffective. Some of them don't mean a hill of beans because they didn't really mean it. It didn't come from their heart. No, it didn't, and y'all have experienced that. What are the elements of an effective apology? There are elements of an effective apology. Sincerity is one. Are they sincere? Your apology should come from the heart and reflect genuine remorse for the harm caused. Acknowledging the impact. That's another component of an effective apology. Acknowledge the impact. Explain how your actions affected the other person and validate their feelings. I apologize. This hurt you. Validate people's feelings. What would happen if we take responsibility? That's a component of an effective apology. Avoid making excuses or shifting blame. Instead, own your actions and their consequences. Another component of an effective apology is to express remorse. Show that you regret what happened and understand the hurt that you caused. Offering a solution if applicable. If possible, offer a way to make amends or prevent similar situations from happening in the future. Listen, we each possess a unique power to live a better life, but many don't recognize its potential. We are full of potential in this nation. This power can stop a 3-hour-long conflict before it even begins. It can stop wars. Look what happened with Pakistan and India. Somebody said, well, that happened because of the Pope. It happened because of President Trump's involvement. The Pope may have had something to do with it, but President Trump was front and center in it. Listen, we're talking about skills, strategy, skills, and tools. Guys, we can turn this nation around. There are reasons to apologize. Apologizing helps avoid conflict. It enables us to learn from mistakes. Apologizing increases social well-being and lowers distress. It can make us stronger, not weaker. Apologizing doesn't admit guilt, or it's not talking about having bad motives, but it's just saying, look, I want to do something different here. I take full responsibility. Listen, we're talking about empowering our nation. What have we looked at tonight? We've looked at focused leadership and the power of apologizing. That's what our president is about. That's what I'm about. That's what would happen if we became focused on that as a nation. Our churches, our schools, our families. There's certain things it's okay for us to be thinking the same way. Listen, I want you to keep coming back. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your prayers. United we stand. A house divided against itself cannot stand. But when you do something, being as mature as taking an apology and putting feet to it, actually executing it, actually being the one that comes to the table, that makes the call, that reaches out, that is mature to apologize, we go from destruction to dignity. It is a clinical perspective. It is a way of thinking that can make us a better nation. Listen, keep coming back. I will see you next week. God bless you. I love you. I appreciate you immensely. Good night.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of From Destruction to Dignity with Janice Pons. Janice's mission is to provoke thought, bring awareness, and point people towards intervention when needed. As a reminder, this show is not therapy, but for educational purposes only. For more information, check out JanicePons.com or follow her on social media.
We are one power, strength is ours, liberty, been set free, education, affirmation, dedication, information, revelation.